Here. Finland. What?
You can search family in the. I understand.
Yeah, but mother is Russian or Soviet Union.
Why didn't they wait for?
Yes.
And Bhagwan, my young. Okay. So this page why I asked about, for example, each country or background, because, for example, if you have some background that will be mentioned during the presentation, so we can, I will have a little bit more information if I know something, because it's interesting to a person.
A lot.
To know your
Modern medicine.
like this. And country also, sometimes,
Sometimes like West.
when you look somewhere, you also study. I study as well, because I also teach medical ethics. And it was a case that it was a Spanish film. I love Spain. And I love even more Portugal. Because of father, maybe, but not only. So, and, it was film, Spanish film. Talk is so it's in English. It's Almodovar film. And in this film, it's very interesting to see from the point of view of medical ethics. It's about women tornado that was paralyzed. Other women. She was paralyzed and so sorry, you need to see the film, but it was some
Täällä vai kaikki on? Tehdäänkö yliopisto?
Oma.
Mennään puhuttiin siitä ekasta sanosta.
Jos mä mietin joskus Suomeen maksumiltaan,
Nyt ei oo.
ei olekaan, mutta voisi perustaa. Jätin rahaa.
Olisi kiva. Mä en tiedä miksi ei oo.
Vaikea.
Miksi? Syystä, että
Kaikki yliopistot Suomessa on valtion. Ei ole, on yksityinen virus. Mutta Viro voisi perustaa.
Virolla, minkälainen yliopisto? Medicine.
Siellä on hyviä, mutta ne on vaikeita.
Vaikea päästä siihen.
Vaikeampi opiskella.
Maailma.
Sama, että jos sä et pääse tosi niin
That's why I go out. It's normal for him. But I never know. We need to surprise. This, if I know in advance, we can about it. Now go out, we continue, and now return. It was really nothing special for us, but for him, for his belief, it was very important. So that's why you need to know something everything.
Mitä noilla tapahtuu?
5 p.m. to the fever. Yes. From Germany. Yes. And from which city?
Osnabrück.
Come to my Arabic. Germany.
Yes.
City.
Osnabrück as well.
We talked about the new countries networks communities in Germany.
Onko saksalaisia enemmän kuin venäläisiä, ei kuin suomalaisia? Vai onko se about sama?
Suomalaisia 6. Ei kun Saara 7.
Ja saksalaisia noin 3, 1. Kun niitä on 5. Mitä niitä on? Ei voi.
No vähän vaihtelee silleen 5-6. No riippuu kuka luokitellaan.
Mm.
So, and one more
From St. Petersburg. From Germany, St. Petersburg.
Vaihdetaanko sille, että sä tulet mun ryhmään?
Do you have some
Jossain.
problems with presentation? Some questions?
Sä voit kysyä, jos on tunnin lopussa.
So, in
Mitä?
you can
Ai, että
find
tulisit
a lot of
mukaan.
materials.
Sä voit kysyä Danielilta aluksi.
Ei se ole tullut, eikö se ole puhunut mukaan?
So, it will be no problem. And the names of scientists, so if you know somebody else or what to tell about somebody, so it's good, just positive, especially such topics like surgery, for example, I mentioned only a few of them. And also, during the presentation, tell not only about medical, for example, what they discover, what they do, and so on, but a little bit more about story around of these people. Sometimes somebody of them, for example, they're friendly friends of famous composers or something, and that's why I think that they were. So there are sometimes stories about around that. And who will make presentation about Nobel Prizes? So you don't need to tell about everybody from the beginning. But for us, most important beginning of this period, because in that time, there were discoveries that you can show, you can feel, so to say. It's microorganisms, treatment of some diseases, vaccination, such kinds of things. And so, because the demonstration that after 60, it's theoretical. After 1960, however, something was, but as far go closer to our present time, discoveries in medicine for which people got Nobel Prize. Sometimes there is some formula or something we can't touch. We can understand when we have education, of course, and we use it. So I was in Philadelphia 2 months ago, for example, and in Spain, just to remember this, here with Nobel Prize winner, hepatitis C. Of course, when I was student, it started also. In that time, it's called not hepatitis C, but it was not A, not B. They call it like this. Then they changed for this. But I never know, for example, that all the details and what to do. For example, that we discovered just some years ago, only that American scientists did it. So I can see this, but somehow we don't think about it. But you can mark one scientist and read about him. Normally, I tell about him because nobody pay attention. This is Niels Ruder.
Kellä on se? Ismail.
Sometimes S, sometimes Z. It depends how many times. Finzer. Niels Ruder Finzer. So for you it will be secret. What it will be, she will tell about. This is famous Danish scientist who discovered something that started to use, and it was extremely successful. A lot of people recovered, so but it was in use something about 30 years, and then different. We will for sure tell about them. It was discovered something different, and no one won't spend time and use previous method. That was not harm you and so on.
Which year was that?
It's a,
Yes.
I think 1908.
Could be.
He tried to treat himself. So, and that made discovery. Niels Ruder Finzer. The year is not important. Important what he did.
Joo.
And for girls also. This is my telephone number, just in case you come too late, or we will be in the city sometimes or somewhere else. You can call to me or to some of your colleagues to ask where they are to find us, or for such kind of things. And email, supporting also that, To this email, you also need to send your presentations in PDF format. This is my name. So, and now we start this kind of lecture. So we start with medicine history. It's also museums, a lot of museums everywhere, and also in Latvia we have some museums. Mostly it's of course Australian museums and affiliates, but also different departments of the university. They have also some collections, and these collections later they were divided with the Australian museums. Some of them still exist, but separately. Also in this building, for example, you can see, and we will see later, part of collection for physiological anatomy. It's also interesting to see how it looks. And also in Charité, for example, you also will see different anatomical specimens. What could happen if you don't treat some disease is what the matter.
Yes, thank you.
Because at that time there were no such medicine.
Keksi lampu.
It's really very
Millä
interesting.
pystyt
Because now we don't study about this, it's not exist anymore.
He käytti
So, medical museums in the University of Latvia. The medical faculty of Latvian University was founded in 1919. Originally, university, its youngest in Baltic states, was established in 1918 during a short period of
Latvian independence.
socialist republic between. And in 1918 was founded university. In 1919, with the support of English and German troops, was established Latvian Republic. And this year, decree comes that the university must have 3 classical faculties, and so medical faculty was open. The history is long, and so in Soviet times, in 1940, when the Soviets come to Latvia, so they separate from the university medical faculty, and they create Riga Medical Institute, the same like it's happened in Russia. And when the Latvian Republic was re-established, later university existed like it exists still. Riga Medical Institute became Riga Stradiņu University. But later, in the beginning of 2000s, university decided, yes, classical university must have medical faculty. That's why it was open medical faculty again. It looks like for Latvia, a small country, 2 medical faculties, it's a little bit too much. But the result of economical situation and political troubles is that after finishing both of faculties, a lot of people who born in Latvia emigrate to different countries, also to Germany, to Norway, to Sweden, and everywhere. And USA, Israel, and so on. And they successfully work in these countries. It's not good or bad, it is life. If you are happy in different countries, it's something, everything together. But what is really maybe not so pleasant that it's big need of doctors in Latvia, especially in countryside, and especially in North Dalia. But we will speak about museums. Medical faculty had or have 9 museums. Museum of Anatomy, and this museum we will visit later. It's on Kronberg Boulevard, historical museum. Pathological anatomy, forensic medicine, neurology, surgical pathology, history of medicine, then separated to the Australian history of medicine museum. It's happened when Paul Strabin still was alive. pharmacy collection, dentistry, and human pathology. And Museum of Anatomy. Museum of Anatomy that you will see in old anatomical theater in the city, was founded in 1920 by the first professor of anatomy, Swedish anatomist and scientist, and he interested not only in anatomy, Gaston Bachmann. Gaston Bachmann, he came from Sweden, from Uppsala University to Riga. He was invited because when medical faculty was founded, there were no professors, local professors who can be teachers in the university. And Bachmann, he was well known, and so they invited him, he agreed, and he came to Latvia, and to start to read lectures, he needs some illustrations. And he took with him part of his anatomical collection that he created in Uppsala University just to illustrate his lectures. And later, other preparators, they make different preparates, and so the collection became bigger. Later, Professor of Anatomy Yanis Piganis, he continued work after Gaston Bachmann. And history of this anatomical department is rather strange for young generation, but it reflects the time that was in Latvia at that time. And it's still located on the territory of old anatomical, but it's separated to different buildings. It was made big reconstruction, and now it's very modern and very nice. Even better like before. So, building of anatomical theatre was erected in 1877. It was Orthodox seminarium in the beginning. Then, during the First World War, German troops used it for just for army and for horses. But then it was rebuilt in 1988. It was named by the name of Yanis Piganis, and he was a branch of Museum of the History of Medicine. Some years ago, he's again separated from the Southern Museum. You see this historical building, and formerly museum was you can see this point, for example. So it was situated on the second floor. This part of the building and these windows. At this part, it was a historical collection that Bachmann brought to Riga. Gaston Bachmann himself, he born in 1883 in Sweden, in this small city Reinge. He studied in Uppsala University and started his studies in Uppsala University in 1901. So it's just about him, you don't need to remember all the dates, and so just in general what it was. And then he became a candidate of medical science in 1907, got license in 1912, doctor of medicine in 1913, and after his dissertation was accepted in Latvia, he came from Uppsala to Latvia. He was assistant of anatomy in Uppsala University from 1905 till 1907. Then he worked also in State Ethnographical and Anthropological Museum, as anthropology needs some knowledge in anatomy, and he worked in this field in Stockholm. He was also doctor in psychiatric hospital in Uppsala, like assistant in 1912 until 1918. And he was head of department in this hospital. Like professor of anatomy and physiology, he started working in 1920. He worked in 1925 in Riga. Later, he immigrated just moved from Latvia and worked in Lund University, in Uppsala University, in Stockholm University in different years, and he died in 1964. So, not so long ago, 1964. Why he moved from Latvia? Because in Latvian Republic, as I told, he worked from 20 to 25. At this time, it started national movement here, and they want because he did his lectures in German language, and educated people in Latvia they mostly were with the German descent, because not secret that big part of the cities like Ventspils, Vidau, Jelgava, Mitau, Liepaja, Nibau, and Riga, and Germans, they always from Russian towns, they got privileges here in Latvia. And so mostly but with national movement, more and more Latvians come to study, and Baltic Germans, they slowly lost their positions here, and he was obliged to read his lectures in Latvian language. And he just don't know Latvian language. He studied English 1 year. After 1 year, he perfectly read his course, but then, like a kind of protest, he moved from this country. Not good, not bad. This is just life. It's happened. He is founder of this museum. When we will speak about them. So here you can see also interesting. This is medical students collect bones from the combat sites during the First World War, and picture taken in 1922. It's Gaston Bachmann time. So it's big enough, but you can't see faces. It's also interesting to see faces of people of that time, because they are the same young like you, and much younger like me, of course. So, but they are very, very different. Then you can see this room, and Gaston Bachmann. He stayed in the room with preparations that he bring from Uppsala University. That's first exhibition room. Jakub Skrivenis, professor. So before Gaston Bachmann in Riga, he was obliged to educate some of his students to the good level that he can continue work of Gaston Bachmann. And the student was with whom worked Gaston Bachmann, Jakub Skrivenis. You see his years of his life. And so he died in 1971 in the United States of America. Why? It's a controversial story, like everything in life. From one side, he was a good anatomist, and he was devoted to anatomy. In his time, it was Professor Koniekiewicz, this Polish origin, who developed, for example, technology to inject blood vessels, or also possible to inject special solution resistant or bronchs, bronchioles, everything, and then with acid you solve human tissues, and you have this from kind of something it's called corrosion preparation. You can see these blood vessels how they look. You will see liver, different internal organs, and so on. But then we'll see the Second World War. During the Second World War, Germans, they opened an anatomical institute that investigate biological guns. And you can understand, you stay in Latvia, war, Nazis come, what to do? You need to work somewhere because your family needs money for food, for everything, and so on. Somebody say no, but you never know what happened. Maybe they will shoot you. So my teacher of Latin, she was, she told no, but she survived. So, but you never know. He agreed to work, and he worked on this. But then, when it became, and also Nazis reactivated him, former KGB building on Brivka Street. It was Gestapo here as well. And Nazis, when they took anti-fascists, for example, they said somebody, some famous people, like Ivan Sultanis and so on, they kill them, they just throw them from the upper floor window to the internal courtyard, and so on, and the person died. But then they invade. It's, for us, it's just a different story. But some doctor need to sign the protocol, what happened. And of course, always it was not that they do it so, but some natural cause. And he, of course, signs these protocols, like famous anatomist. Again, if he say no, maybe they will shoot him or throw him. So if he say yes, then they wait at home, and so on. So it happened. But when Soviet army come, he understands that for that he would be also punished. That's why he with the German troops to Germany in the beginning, but then he immigrated from Germany to the United States, and he continued his work like professor of anatomy for some period in the United States. And of course, he never been afterwards in Britain, but I have seen his daughter. So later, it was daughter immigrated with her son back to Latvia. When Latvia became independent again during the second Republic time in the 90s. 1990s. So, Gaston Bachmann and Jakob Primatis. Museum of Pathological Anatomy, Professor Adelheim, Roman Adelheim founded it in 1921. Initially located in the first hospital, it's Brunenieku Street now. This hospital, it is typical German project for the hospitals. Just it's situated in Riga, such a way that during when it's windy, that the wind don't pass through the corridors. So they find where is less windy the side and so on. And it's old hospital. It was opened in the 19th century. But museum in 1921, initially in the first hospital, then it moved to the second Riga hospital. This is Tallinn Hospital nowadays, part of here. And it's still Clinical University Hospital, named by Paul Stalin. And this museum still exists, but it's divided. Some part you will see in this building, I think, on the ground floor. And some part belongs to the Stalin University. And you can see when museum had a separate building, it's like pathological department in Stalin Hospital. And in this collection, among the objects, it was also heart of Sri Lankan elephant. And for people, it was interesting just to see it because it's like a human, but just huge. But when they moved this collection to a different building, they just brought the chart, and at that time, it was in 80s last century, it was impossible to create such a chart in a short period of time, and so, and just object this card was destroyed. Roman Adelheim himself. Roman Adelheim, he finished, he won, first of all, in 1881 in Revel, Tallinn. Studied in Nikolaus Gymnasium, Orthodox, and then he finished Dorpat University, Tartu is called now. He studied there from 1901 to 1907. Dorpat University originally it's mostly also German. German professors worked here. Then he studied in Munich and Greifswald and in Berlin, and later also in St. Petersburg. And in 1913, he came to Riga. In 1923, in the Latvian University, he wrote his dissertation. And from 1920, he was professor in Latvian State University. From 1925, director of Institute of Pathology. He died in Riga in 1938. You can see here also how looks Museum of Pathological Anatomy in his time. And this is Professor Roman Alderheim himself. And guys, look to the students who are watching microscopes, like it happened here on the third floor. And so they are the same age like you are. That means nothing, but it's interesting like itself. That's why interesting also history.
Really people.
The next museum is Museum of Forensic Medicine, founded by senior lecturer Ferdinand Neureuther in 1923, also for education of students. They use premises in the Riga mortuary. Riga mortuary, if you drive to the island beach, bridge, so not this, but second, where TV tower and so on. When you come opposite side, where old city, just driving from the bridge right side, you see one floor, a small yellow building. This building still exists. Unfortunately, I don't know how they use it now, but formerly it was also forensic medicine expertise in this building. When something happened, for example, in the night, and so they going to the hospital to this expertise, and then for court they make examination and documentation like this. Now I don't know this one. This museum still exists, but part of the collection. And this is this building. You can see how it looks like. And Ferdinand Neureuther himself, how he looks. He born in 1893 in Budapest, Austro-Hungarian Empire. He studied in Gymnasium in Vienna, then in Vienna University Medical Faculty. He made few interruptions during his studies, that's why he started medicine in 8 years. Then he became Doctor of Medicine in Vienna University in 1920. He was subsistent assistant and then director for a few years, but in 1922 we came to Latvia, became docent and director of Institute of Forensic Medicine. And he worked from 1922 to 1937. Then he moved partly because he had a German background. At this time, Adolf Hitler invaded Germans from all states, returned to Germany. But at the same moment, Latvia at this time discovered Sulvinis monuments for him now in the city, became also nationalistic and the same kind of a state. One country, one language, and he is a leader of the nation and such kind of things. And Germans, they really state took their factories, for example, houses, everything, and for this they paid for Germans, but they gave some symbolic money. That's why some people never took this money. That's why, by law, it was possible for them to get their houses and property back. It still existed in the Second Republic time in the 90s. And he never had the property and so, but because Germany asked to join them, he moved to Germany at the beginning. So then he worked in Berlin a few years, in Hamburg till 1941, in Strasbourg University till, and later he became a professor for this house in the Federal. He died in 1945 in Peterstadt, in Germany. Then you can see also Museum of Forensic Medicine, and you can see Ferdinand Neureuther stay here. system here. That's key. There are different professors behind, there are students. So I must say, forensic medicine, not everybody like. You will have this course. I don't know how it's happened now. When I started, it was experience, so to say, because each student must make one investigation together with real specialists in forensic medicine. And again, it's different fields of medicine. You will find something what you like. Some will be general practitioner, but for example, also specialists in forensic medicine. They have also medical education. For some reason, they became who they are, and it's also necessary. You know, in my case, when we make this section, so I'm not good with that. I find I'm normal as much as possible. But to research old books, that's fine. It was a book for 10 days. So you can imagine, and you, like you are in this time, young student, so I stay. And professor, very well known at the time, we don't know if she's still alive, but she wrote a book about this, about her professional competence. And we make sections with the scopes and so on, and I stay with sweater and so on. I just come and she, oh doctor, if you use alcohol, can you feel this sour smell and so? Oh, try it and so. Doesn't matter. Alcohol, it's not different. I think maybe that was really horrible. And you all stay behind and say, just perfume, etc. So we made this, and I remember, of course, because it's once in my life, I still remember where this man was found. Not the address, but the number, but the house was staying in the documents. And this case, how it was. Many years later, more than 10 years later, I created one exhibition in the Museum of History of Medicine, and this lady found like consultant. So we started speaking and said, oh, you go to me, but I was your student, and so on. And we made this session. So, Doctor, interesting, what it was, and so you forget it. So, no, interesting. I said, no, it was then, the town, later. And so the short story is our theatrical exaltation. Rather old man, but healthy, so he used alcohol, but not like crazy. He was not chronic alcoholic, liver was more or less normal for his age and so on. But he used alcohol at home. He was drunken, but not crazy. And he tried to repair his shoe. And for this, he used this sharp instrument. And occasionally, because he was on the alcohol, he's like this. This instrument just damaged his arteria on the leg. But the problem was that it will come exactly to the arteriosclerosis, this formation is calcium. And that's why this artery not closed, because it's hard. If it would be a different place, for example, you can close it and so on, and itself it closes so on. But this was not deep, but hard. And he tried to do something, and then he fell asleep, and just his blood come out. He was not killed. For professionally, it was necessary to know if he was killed or what it was, and so on. And this and so on. And of course, I remember this case all my life. But she like professional also. Yes, I remember. He did some Moscow sleeping. Yes, Moscow sleeping. So it was right or left leg. So it's interesting. I don't remember. It was left. You do 3 sections later, you remember. And for me, it was once in life, a general life. So of course, I'm impressed. I know and so on. So all people in their place, specialists who devoted to their professions, they are good, and we need all of them. And sometimes it's
really interesting. So, it was about Ferdinand Narrator. The next one is Museum of Neurology. This museum founded by Professor Wilde in 1924, located in the neurology building in the first city hospital. Again, Brunier Street. This building still exists. There is something medical, but long ago, I've been last time there. I don't know what's exactly the state. For me, it was one of the not neurological department. It was cardiology, I think. And there were items related to the brain. Museum was closed and removed after Janis Wilde was arrested in 1950. So you can see the building on the dormitory of this hospital. This building still exists, and you can see this person, Janis Wilde. About brain and neurology and such cases. You know, it was a period of time, maybe some so phrenology was very popular. What is phrenology? It was science, it still exists, about the study in which part of our brain formed different kinds of things that make us alive, so to say. What is responsible for what kind of our life? And the value also. It's became popular at the end of the 19th century, 20th century. Special measures, they tried to work on some places in the brain that see, also doctors, for example. So they not really work together, but there were some doctors who work for these institutions, like kind of scientists. So maybe it was interesting. I don't know. For example, with high temperature steam through the skull, with steam, that why? To get the temperature through the skull, for example, they tried to solve, for example, some fragment of the brain somewhere. It's a technical zone, and to see if, for example, this person will forget something, or I don't know, what will be, for example, or will be not given any, such kind of things. It was a lot of things. In that times, we now listening to this because we know much more, and so also in our brain. So it's strange for us, but at that time it was science. It was really interesting. A lot of people devoted their life just to study this, and it was popular to have from porcelain kind of head of human head with the zones, with these phrenological responsibilities of these zones. So you can see that in the museums. For some doctors it was for work, but some doctors they like it just how to say, like a decoration, like profession, like now magnet on the refrigerator. So it was, and in that time opened many museums of the brain. Such museums were closed collections everywhere in Germany. I have been personally, for example, but let's see, in the Brain Museum in Moscow. Because in the 90s it came because it was project of all the museums related to history. We had document as smart as the Brain Institute in Moscow, they had collection. They came and it was Frenchmen, they came and said, "Oh, so that's what they were not allowed in my colleague to pass into the building. It's all buildings in the center of Moscow. But the same collection was also in Riga. And nowadays, people don't know what happened with this collection because also me, and specialists, they never seen anymore these brains. But in this collection, if in Moscow it was brain of Vladimir Lenin, Oleg Mayakovsky, so famous people. In Riga, there are also brain of Tavis Urbanis, Yanis Rainis, Latvian poet, and so famous people of this time. Idea was that how they collect this brain. It was not red specimen, but they made with cuts, and these cuts were stored between the glasses, imaginary and so on. And they thought that if not now, maybe later, can examine this all these cuts and discover something. So it's not bad, but it's just is now thrown away. What happened is either we don't know because people who work devoted people, even when they close they mess up. Everybody knows that it's somewhere, but no one knows where. Maybe still somewhere. But it was such a time that people just knowing about the structure and so that what you they just reflect to tell. It's very strange. So, but it was this Janis Vilde who founded this museum and started this work in Latvia. Here you can see him like a young person when he started to work in the Latvian State University. By the way, he was the best student of I think Gaston Bachmann, Swedish, and he was assistant for Gaston Bachmann in the beginning. Before he finished his studies and start to work in the field of neurological connections. He born in 1900 in a small country house, Ashmani in Latvia. Started in school, then he was in the army, and after army, he entered the medical faculty. And he studied medicine, and also he was assistant for Gaston Bachmann. In 1931, he started working in the Latvian University. At the beginning, in the Department of Anatomy, and he investigated leprosy and what happened with the neural system and with the brain when a person is sick with the lepra. Then was sub-assistant from 20 to 26, assistant, docent from 39 to 40, and then from 40 to 46 again he was contracted. He was professor from 36 to 37 after Second World War, New Soviet time. He was head of Department of Neurology, and it was in his first hospital. But in 1915, some of colleagues, he wrote to special services like a letter about him that he is against regimes and kind of things and so on. He was arrested and he spent 6 years in lagers very far in the north. But look at his face, can you imagine? He was not in political like his colleagues. But when he returned in 1956, it is time that it was rehabilitation of the people who were sent out. They showed him the names who signed this letter. And the first name, it was his best friend, who after him became head of institute. And of course, they said, you are welcome, you can take a room, and so you will be director again, and so on and so on. But in this chair sitting his best friend, that now, of course, from this moment was not the best friend. And for him, he's much younger here, but at age, he was the same kind of 9. It was such a shock that he decided don't work anymore in the university at all. And so and he worked like, however, at certain time it was not allowed, but he had his private practice, only he made it. He worked like very good neurologist, but no science, no education, nothing, no university, just till the end of the life, like a doctor. And looked like his colleagues, and so there were friends for him, they were friends, but not from medical field, from different, so on. Again, why I tell about this is maybe not interesting in general, but it shows what would be like. It happens with everybody. Not like this, different situations, different and so on, but just would be statistic now about museums in system of Latvian State University. The next one is Museum of Surgical Pathology, founded by Paul Stradic. I wrote second session will be Paul Stradic, his wife, and so on. In the second Riga Hospital, it is Paul Stradic University Hospital now, and this Museum of Surgical Pathology was supplemented with objects about history of medicine. Where it was, you see, main old entrance to the Stradic Hospital, and you just pass all the curtains. At the end, there are all the operation rooms, and in this complex of operation rooms, there were auditorium, and there were shelves on two floors under the glass that stayed anatomical preparations that were made by Paul Stradic and also by historians. And it was old wood house on the territory. There was collection about history of medicine. In our days, it's very difficult to create collection like it was created before, because it's everywhere. It's not only like that. Now, to make something, you need to have agreement with the family person or with the person in the lab, for example, with the profession. But you will see in the Museum of Anatomy, pathological objects and so on. Nowadays, it's impossible because no real science, something like this. Only, because when you force communication, it's going to be very good. It's not good, not bad, but like for specialists, it's not very good because they need to study and they need to see what is known. And they know that sometimes, always for everything must be some reason. But sometimes we can't find this reason. But it doesn't mean that there is no reason. For example, Germany. For example, spina bifida. Do you know what it is? In anatomy. Spina bifida is when the lateral column is not closed. And very often it's related pathology. They have problems with the skull, hydrocephaly, and when they have hydrocephaly, often they have the spina bifida. And formerly it was not possible to treat. But it's also strange because it's our time. After Second World War, United States, Great Britain, and Poland, they created Spina Bifida Society that was, strange, it was close to the scientists from different countries. They had each year conferences on Spina Bifida Medical Society, but to take part, the time can only surgeons who are members from Great Britain, Netherlands, and United States. It was strange for me. It's also related that in Poland there was an exhibition about Spina Bifida for this congress. They invited to make an exhibition, and it was first year that it was allowed scientists who work with this and surgeons to visit this congress. And then come, of course, surgeons from all over the world. And before it was very close society. And I started about this lecture, so what is strange?
So it's like this game.
They know it's before that in Germany,
Ja, 18.
Sen takia mä aloitin.
from Karl and don't get it wrong. They have a much higher rate of spina bifida as in other places in the world. And what it should be, no one knows. So maybe now they discover it. No one knows. But because there are a lot of theories. Drugs, of course, in democratic Germany, for example, to get drugs, because they increased immediately at that time. I was since 1994, chemical industry, people don't know in chemistry, there's no such significant chemical industry or something in the ground, something slow. Spoke also about if genetically it's more or less close society. It's also not because people movement, so there were no explanation for this. So that's why pathology is also interesting for some scientists. Why people start because of some reason to study only pathology and work in this field. So, and next one, you can see here Paul Stradin here saying, but this is not the department of this pathology, but it's more objects related to the history of medicine. And Museum of the History of Medicine related to this Museum of Pathology. Part of preparation still exists. They exist also in this radio university. In the old anatomical building, not in part of Museum of Medicine. History officially established as the University Museum in 1944, but then, because people interested in this, in 1956, Paul Stradin bought from the state building in the city of Riga, and collection moved to this building. From Riga, this University Hospital, as you call now. In 1957, the new collection started working in exposition, and they opened the museum in 1961. Paul Stravinsky died in 1958. He never saw a museum opening, but he worked in the exposition, and still, a year ago, there were some objects that looks illustration for history of medicine that looks very old-fashioned, but Paul Stradin by himself, he worked on this exposition, and so that's why it became kind of memorial. Museum of the History of Medicine, Paul Stradin Museum. However, now exposition is completely different. It is third largest collection in the world, after Smithsonian in the United States, but again, I thought, probably because it's the largest collection in the world, that they have a Museum of the History of Medicine. So now I come to read from Washington. So with Smithsonian, it's a lot of museums, but they don't have Museum of the History of Medicine. But these institutions, they give their objects for different exhibitions in different museums, like biology, anthropology, and so on and so on and so on. And second largest collection, this is Wellcome Museum in London. So, Great Britain, who was?
No, I have been there. I have been in the museum. Yeah.
It's part of technical museum. So I have been in this museum, wasn't something close to 20 years ago, and it was in different building, and it was small, but it was very, very interesting because each collection was separately. You can see private belongings and the instruments and everything of many, many English famous scientists, world famous names. Everything who is from Great Britain, so they have something in collection. Starting with, for example, penicillin framing, Harvey, and so on and so on and so on. Nowadays it's much bigger, different parts of the building. It's very modern, still very interesting, but you don't see this historical part. They preserve it for the future. You can see there's something. The rest is educational, a very interesting educational museum, so to say, for general public. A lot of people, and again, when they speak, I don't know. I think it's the same with you. You know that nowadays there are robots that make operations. So it's called Galileo.
Da Vinci. Everybody heard that Da Vinci is not the first generation, it's from second and now third generation of the Da Vinci. So sometimes it's in use when some surgeons in some countries somewhere create some very new operation, and they say, oh, it's with the help of this work Da Vinci and so on. For us, it's something like fly to the space. And then for me, it's also culturological shock that you see first generation of Da Vinci. It's a museum. In technical museum, collection of history of medicine. Stay in museum. But here we, for example, we don't know how it looks. It's a bit small and so on. Also interesting. So then you will be in London, for example, but in London it's also surgeon college collection, for example. It's also interesting. It's a part of collection about anatomy. Here you can see all this museum does not exist anymore. Where was this collection of medicine found starting in the museum made by his name, working on the exposition. The same, this unit still exists. And building of the Museum of the History of Medicine.
Kato se meni noin, siis kippani.
The next one is
Ei vittu,
Museum
ei
of
skippa.
Pharmacy. Founded in 1937 by Professor Yanis Mazdi in the pharmaceutical department of the Faculty of Chemistry. The original collection dates to the 18th century. In the time of history of Riga as a city, we will see later, you will see a place where probably was first chemist shop in Riga. It's near modern city hall. But in 19th century, for example, there were only 12 chemist shops in Riga. 12. So the whole city. Because the city was small. Before the Second World War, there were only 230,000 citizens in the city. 230,000. However, now we go again back to this, but for example, the last 30 years, Riga was infected by 1 million citizens. So it was. But why? As I told you, Germans, they always pillaged in Latvia and the cities and so on. And then Riga is also German city, however, there are also English tradesmen, so we have agriculture which was there. There were Russians, of course, Orthodox Church, so there were Jewish people, there were Polish people, but Germans always had special position here. And really all of them, owners of the chemist shops, 12 chemist shops, 12 owners, they were, of course, Germans. Nearly all of them, they started in Estonia now, in Tartu, University. And to avoid concurrence, so there was special law, and to open new chemist shops was nearly impossible. Only one was opened during the Swedish time for Swedish army, but they can't sell medicines to citizens of Riga, only for Swedish soldiers. Another 12. And then the right to have a chemist shop has come from generation to generation. That's why for owner of chemist shop, it was the same like for King of England. Important to have a son, because it was job of male, daughter, or wife, can't inherit chemist shop. If you don't have son, that means that you will die. So you will lost it. And it's not that somebody took it for free, so but your wife or your daughter or your wife, they must have lunch to sell it.
somebody. So it will be another German.
Olisiko kysyä paljon me saatiin?
Se sanoi, että tuo on aika sillä vitosta määrästä. Ja ne
Such was life.
Sanoiko sinä?
oli niin paljon.
And
Kukaan ei kuunnellut.
yeah, finally, he just collected furniture because pharmacy also developed and so on. More modern equipment and so on. He started to collect old equipment from the care shops. And care shops, I speak 12 in Riga, but Latvia's Latvia, for example, bring them to the economical faculty now in this building in Riga. And he presented this museum, but the university paid for storage and for everything. So he died in 1950, and the rest of collection was given to Paul Stradich Museum. But during the Second World War, big part of this historical furniture so disappeared because there were no fuel and money, for example, to keep the university, and the winter university still works, and so there were students. And just to heat the rooms in the main building in Rhein Ruhr, for example, they took this furniture and used it just for heating of the rooms. Also happened. Even nowadays, I remember, and and so on, you will see homeopathic care shop in Riga, and it was one of the first in Russian Empire. And this care shop was very beautiful, and furniture was created for this care shop, and we will speak about this later, for 2 floors. It's open 2 floors, so you can see this, and so on, there were stairs, and so on. It was very interesting. But when in the 90s, life was not always legal, owner bought this building like supposed to be back, and so he don't want to have the care shop at his work. And the care shop was obliged to move, and it happened so quickly that to divide this old furniture from real wood, it was very difficult. So, and they took something to new premises that now in Latvia Street, but the rest was destroyed just. So, but in general, it not happened like a happened, it could be also like a museum, this care shop. It was very beautiful and very special. We will speak later also a little bit about homeopathy. Do you know what it is? Everybody know? So, who else? Silence. Why didn't you ask what it is? You don't know.
Alternative medicine.
Kind of. Homeopathy, with simple words, it's treatment with a small dosage. What does it mean? Again, 18th century, 19th century, somewhere 19th century, and somewhere in Kahneman, you will see he later. He decided, at that time, opened first microorganisms, and they are very small. And he decided that people use medicine, medicaments, and medicaments is indeed mostly it's in those flowers and fruits and so on. But if we use in a big dosage, thinking about our body. But if microorganisms is so small we can't see it, so that means to kill microorganisms, you don't need such huge dosage. You can have very small. And so, and then he makes solution 1 to 10, 15, 20, 100, 1,000, and everything in between. And some people don't believe in nothing in this. Somebody believe, somebody help, somebody not. Just 2 years ago, it was campaign also in Latvia against homeopathy that it's nothing. So it's not necessary to have this care shop and everything. But homeopathic practitioners, for example, they get special education extra in homeopathy to know this and so they don't. So sometimes what I know for sure, for example, that for example in Moscow they have homeopathic hospital and is a market for children. And I have seen in Congress ladies on the department, she told that for small children, when they got some allergy and then asthma, to treat asthma when you are 3, 4, 5, for example, normally we treat it by this the same night for 8 hours. And if you have, it will develop with age, so you can't treat it completely. And she told that they, with homeopathic drugs, they can improve reaction of the body to the allergens and so on, and prevent or sometimes treat also asthma, like small children, that disappear forever. They grow it and then they grow like calcium. Believe or not believe, she is specialist, so I believe. The same moment when I studied medicine, for example, our head of department of pharmacy, he was very special also, and he was really very strong and so on. Everybody afraid of him because everybody was afraid not to pass the exam, and if he remember you and don't like you, you will never ever pass this exam. So everybody sitting afraid to say any word. And one day he came to the auditorium, he seated on the table and asked us, so rainy day, not like today, what we can speak about in such rainy day? And we sitting pale, that we don't ask you the good and so I said, we can speak about homeopathy. We don't know homeopathy. This is nothing. So that means if you make such solutions, you will never get even few molecules of the active stuff. So this is just you drink water, it's the same. That's everything. Homeopathy, the rest of the lecture is theory. Okay. So this is sense of humor. But there are people, it's special homeopathic insurance, also in Riga, in Latvia. Once I have a case, so I try to use homeopathy. In my case, it don't help, but it doesn't mean that it will not help to everybody. So people come, people pay, people buy, people use, and for sure to somebody it helps. So that was my private experience. That is about homeopathy, Samuel Kahneman, and we speak about the Museum of Pharmacy, and you will see this museum. First of all, this is Professor Meisen, the founder. He was like student of formerly lecturers that were not so rich, and they come and study pharmacy in the university. Just they don't have money for this. But second possibility to be recognized in society and to be well situated was just to come to the chemist shop, some German owner, for example, and to work by him, helping him and so on, and then pass exam by him. And Janis Meister, he dreamed about this, and in 19th century, at the end of 19th century, he got the right to study by pharmacists in the chemist shop. But later he moved to Russia and he worked and studied in Russia, passed exam like a helper, assistant of pharmacist in 1901 in Devon. Then Saratov passed the cities in Russia. Then he got place in Tartu University and he studied there from 1904 till 1908. Then he worked in the department of pharmacy in Dorpat University. Then it was war. He was on the war in Russia. Then he worked also in Russia till 1921. But then he moved to Riga because he is Latvian and started to work from 1921 in Riga and became doctor of pharmacy in 1937. He wrote a dissertation about extracts of, I don't know English name, papaya. It was accepted also in Soviet time in 1945. And so he worked very well in the faculty. He was head of faculty of pharmacy in university also, and he became like head of the laboratory, pharmaceutical laboratory of Academy of Science of Latvian Republic. He made a degree in 1950. And you can see fragment of exposition in the Pharmacy Museum. Then Museum of Dentistry. Karl Baron, street called Christian Baron Street in Riga in the center. This is his father. Christian Baron, by modern Latvian history, he is first collector of Latvian folklore. It's not true. He was collector, and his collection now is museum in Baron Street as well. And this street called by his name because he lived on this street. But originally, first collector it was German philosopher. So, and I don't know about him later. You will see this place in Riga. His son, Karl Baron. Karl Baron is also very interesting person. He born in St. Petersburg. Here he studied in gymnastica. Then he comes to the Moscow University, and he saw that he interested in mathematics and such kind of things. And he started to study physics and mathematics. And he studied physics and mathematics in 4 years. But after 4 years of physics and mathematics, he understands that it's not interesting at all to him, and he decided to be a doctor. He came to the medical faculty, and he studied medicine extra from 1888 to 1891. From 1892, he returned. I can't say returned because he was born in Petersburg, but he was like Latvian descent. He decided to come to Riga, and he worked here like a dentist. But later he became docent in Latvian University in 1921. And he worked in 1931. Professor, then director of the Stomatological Institute, Dr. Konrad Kauser. He never get scientific grade, only Konrad Kauser as a owner. And here died in Turajda, CNC Day in 1944. So you can see this is Stomatological Institute where he worked, and this is his portrait. He is really among specialists that have good education. I don't know how you know this, but before he was very well known. Why? First of all, before, and also now somewhere, we call dentistry. But he introduced the term stomatology. Why? His idea was that he became head of the institute, but again, he never had medical grade like professor. He never wrote dissertation. But he was very clever, and he was excellent orator, and he read interesting lectures. His lectures he was great in Berlin, in Vienna, and all over Europe. And he just said that if people have problems with the teeth, very often it's related to the whole body, and so that stomatologists, dentists, they must study not only like before mouth and teeth, but whole medicine. They need to know whole anatomy and so on and so on, gastroenterology and everything like that. This is his idea. Second, that he also spoke about diet, sugar, and such kind of things, is that I've never known that really sugar 100%, but one of that is. And because of that he changed education of dentists and introduced this stomatology, so he became, because he was good lecturer. He also liked to work like a practitioner. And of course, I'm not young anymore. I have seen some old ladies. So, from Riga, who told that he was a bad doctor.
excellent teacher, but not why. On the portrait, you see he looks a little bit like Karls Ulmanis, president of Latvia and so on. He was big, really big, and he had big fingers as well. And then he treated teeth in the mouth, especially for younger generation of children. He goes like, so 2 fingers in the mouth, and the child, and he do it, but he can't see. That's why other different dentists that after him, they try to improve and so on. In museum, you will see still his war machine and figure out that he worked by himself. Again, because he was living, so maybe your grandmother somebody had shaving machines with this. But stomatological war, you work with the same principle. You sit in and you do it. So some doctors, he just like it good, he was getting short, and so you sit and do. Some well-situated stomatologists, they had different courses because he only do what you do, it's easier. And some of it, like the students, they learn with this and work. Only was start with this. And it was just 100 years ago. Unbelievable. Electrical war machine, for example, was introduced later in the 20s, last century. But before, and you can imagine, of course, he was working slowly, I'm trying to finish. So it was. He was not, I trust these people, so he was fine. So his pathological department, all teachers, they know about this because everybody, there was somebody who came to the museum, so he said, I see this chair, so I remember this. Now, of course, the generation is passing away. But then he also technically, in 1944, he just cycling and he was not so well informed about what happened in his surroundings, and cycling in so he just died under the cancer tank. I don't know it's military machine. He died from this. He was not young, but still he was in very good condition. Otherwise, he's
On a bicycle in 44. That's crazy.
And the Museum of Pathology founded in 2001 at the University of Latvia by Professor Smara Kilmanen. Later was converted into the Museum of Human Pathology under the leadership of Associate Professor Valentina Dragushina. Valentina Dragushina still working in, she has now students on the third floor, so it's pathological anatomy. Normally this collection was in this building, it's very strange. It was Institute of System of Academy of Science of Latvia. But however, it was experimental laboratory. I never seen any equipment there. It was very nice, old-fashioned hall for presentations, for conferences, and so on, and some rooms for famous academicians and so on. And not now, but if you're really very interested, possible to go also now. You will see when we will cover physiological anatomy, you will see this collection part of this museum. The second half, Mara Kilmanen, on this photo she is young. Left side, it's moved to the anatomical theater of Latvian State University. So, in general, one state museum of global significance. This is Australian Museum. 2 branches of this museum, 3 sub-faculties, scientific museums, and 3 museums during the course of the time closed and built for some reason. All collections disappeared or was united to some different collection. And this is main building of Latvian State University, where you studied. And interesting because it was built like a German technical school. And if you will come through the main entrance inside,
you will see columns, and these columns say made by, I don't know exactly English name, from metal, not lead, but this.
Oh,
Iron.
iron. But it's iron, but
Cast iron. Cast iron. Cast iron.
Yeah,
Yeah.
cast iron.
Yeah.
So the cast iron. So the next time you will be in the main building, come closer and try. They are cold, they not so cold because of colors and so on. And try it's cast iron. And interesting that university was not built like this main building. At the beginning, it was just main campus and one wing. And then university collected money, donations and so on, and then they built symmetrically second building. It's also interesting because I understood that the building was built just like that. So it's end of 19th, 20th century and German technical school. That's what I can to you to tell about museums in the university. Somebody is ready for presentations tomorrow, for example, or some days. So we will start some with this, and then we will come to the next week, just also to go out to see what you want to see. It's easy, you will be not so sleepy, honestly, I hope. And maybe it will be also interesting. And also in music, it's always, sometimes people ask me, you interested in architecture, you like it? Yes, I like it. I can't say that I'm interested. So if you live in some city with a history, it's nice to know something. Doesn't matter where you live. So now, for example, I come from America, and it was really, it's also culturological shock because I never been before. Never, ever been before. If I know how it will be, I just not agree to come. Now I'm trying to reduce this. It's not good, not bad. Of course, it's maybe. But I think when I started, it was all the time. When Soviet Union collapsed, and many of my colleagues who studied with me, nice people, they dream to come to America and they do it. And they work some of them. I don't call it contract, you can find that now everything. They work somewhere in America. So, and of course, I came to Washington and I read, I've seen something on TV. Some colleagues said, oh, you will love it. Small, European city in the United States. And I said, I always dream to see New York. But the result is really, it's completely different in everything. It's completely different life. And then you visit like tourists. Now, because I came just to, I know that I will stay for 2 years. But you don't expect anything. But as a tourist, you see the best. Some museums in Washington, Smithsonian, Jewish museums, best in the world. Art, space, doesn't matter, building, art, history of black people, history of Indians, and so on. With some expectations happen. So, democratic Germany, so-called in Germany. There's films about Indians, this way to meet each other. You know, they're suppressed and so on. But here in the Jewish Museum, you come down, you see how it was and how it still happened with the Indians. You just shocked because it's never ever possible in our society. Yes, some people also manage to something and something, but it's out of human nature to do such purposes as they live now in Somalia. Medical health system is all about money. I don't like aboriginal documents, and if you have this plastic police one, I don't want to do that, especially because it's also criminality around it. So it's a home. It's like, okay, if I fall on the street, I don't have this police. Okay, is it far? I will come to the hospital and you call it on the door and so do something. No. How it was? No, you never pay. Then call it from Latvia and see people. They have the same insurance like we have. It's very good. He said, I was in the hospital and 3 hours, they took the police, and 3 hours no one came to me. Why? Because first they go to the insurance company. Then they don't discuss what you pay insurance company, hospital, how much they want to have. So it takes 3 hours. Then they will come to you and they agree with somebody and they will tell them, okay, with your insurance you have this and this, because it's expensive. But it costs so much, all this you need to pay extra. You need to pay so. Do you have this money? You say have, you have money. If you don't have, nothing will happen today. Somebody from your family, they need to get loan from the bank. And then you can take it from the bank and bank will take from your loan. Then they start to make operation, for example, appendicitis. Okay. But today it's appendicitis, tomorrow it's pericarditis.
Appendiksilla. Se tulee tosi.
Joo, ja se on paha.
Mun serkkuuteeksi pienen lapsella yhtäkkiä.
Tosi nopea.
For me, it's
Mulle se on ihan täysin. Mulla oli.
Leikattiinko?
Ei. 6 tunnissa meni jo 5.
Menikö lääkäriin? Minkälainen tuntikausi?
Mutta 6 tuntia me pestiin ja se yhtäkkiä lähti.
Olit lääkärissä? Antaako ne mitään antibiootteja? Se laittaa laski. Kertooko se mistä johtuu, että se on tuossa?
in meat, chickens, everywhere. Good for yes, but you want to have its shiny and that it will form after it's different nitrous. Everything is nitrous, also bread. Fresh baked bread. Europe is different, so they have more of that. But Washington, anyway, it's kind of sense, it's not Europe, it's Central, United States. So, and then it's still important when you fry it on the first, for example, come to the batter, and then there is special, because we can't clean it anymore. But then I read the internet what to do, because you boil this special pans where water is a pan, and then it's hot water. It's just so strange, I was wondering, when I got it, oh, you can't even, I made food, you can't even wash it, and so what happened? You patent, so it's in 2 months it's good. It's very strange. It seems interesting to visit, it's nice, and so on. Also, Dr. Fred, but in Germany it's the same. You sign policy, so if something gets wrong, so it's everywhere now. But maybe it's different. When they explain, or now it's a feeling, I thought, okay, a few months, maybe later I will like it. But as far as us, worse and worse, when you understand how deep everything is. So, but you are, it's time. And by the way, when it's finished, 5 minutes, or you will have introduction. So, you have right also to tell. See you tomorrow.
Eikö me kysytä joten sit mitään?
I just have to repeat these.
Hello. Okay. But only today. But today you let you see comments.
We don't have any subjects.
It's another semester or something.
So I don't know.
Okay.
So that's what I. And your topic was? My topic was acceptance.
Okay.
Sitten koet, sä otit vai, että vielä valmiin. Jos mä oon lähettäis sulla kaikki.
We both are.
I was born in Finland, yes.
We both are born in Finland, but I lived a couple of years in Russia. Most of my life. No, I have only Finnish passport, and my visa is for next month. Yeah. But people are going sometimes to Russia.
Yeah. It was just a question because it's we have
Edwin, avaks Aero. Avaks sun Aero.
study for a I don't want to refresh maybe another evaluation that the past
Could be used.
like
No, evaluation method goes like this. Don't worry about things. You don't. All my cards on the table, so you don't need to prepare something prepared for this. You don't need to read it and to you it's important to be present in all our seminars and lectures. Or like this, I don't know the lecture seminar because it's and you don't know if it's rain, for example, you don't go to the city. It stays there. So. But don't worry about the exam. It will not take time, but you need to write the paper. It's also notation, so and result problems.
So don't you need to know like by heart the name of the people and what it is.
You're not finished. How to say? I'm not young, but I hope I don't spend the meaning of asking. I don't remember numbers. And, numbers that means telephone number, dates, years, and so on. I find it's not normal. What you need to know really, it's better find. I will show this is the last question. But you must be Israel Alzheimer to completely forget something. You remember something, So you can share information. But something will be, because it's city where you walk, you just don't know that this is building like this. Don't worry about it. Study, read the article once. If something, I will look. First question is historical. Don't worry about this and so, but again, you need to know where to find something you really know. But example is not that you get stress and you lost your sleep and such kind of things. Exam is just to make this kind of proof